Hello, friends. My name is Tiffany Babb, and this is Interesting Jobs, the podcast, where I talk to people with interesting jobs about their day-to-day, popular misconceptions about their field, and what they wish more people understood about their jobs. Today, our very special guest is Carolina Quijano from Exquisito Chocolates. So, Carolina, what do you do?
Well, hi, Tiffany. I own a chocolate factory and I actually buy cacao from different farms throughout Latin America and the Caribbean and produce chocolates, everything from bars, bonbons, and confections that we sell at our retail shop, but also throughout different gourmet grocery stores and at restaurants and hotels.
That sounds fascinating. For our listening audience, what does the cacao bean look like when you're buying it?
So for most people don't realize that chocolate comes from a fruit. So when we talk about a cocoa bean, we're actually talking about the seed that is inside of the pod, which looks a little bit like a papaya. And inside, you'll find about 40 to 50 kind of lychee looking little pulp fruits. And inside of those little pulpy fruits are the seeds themselves. A lot of people say they look like almonds, and they're quite delicious and quite nutritious. And then eventually we do turn them into chocolate bars that we all love.
What does that process look like from bean to bar?
I like to say that we're sort of masochistic chocolatiers. Most of the times, you guys go into a chocolate shop and chocolatier will buy mass produced chocolate, do tons of stuff with it. Nothing wrong with that, but we like to be completely masochistic in our process. So what we do is we will take those fermented cacao seeds. We bring them into our shop and we treat them very much like a winemaker would. We bring from 7 different farms and we never mix them together from all the different unique places. From there, we have to roast them. So we cook them. And that, very similar to coffee, you need to roast for flavor. Part of what we impart on it and kind of why we do what we do is we get to play with chocolate in a way that the average chocolatier can't. So we experiment a lot with how we roast it, a minute longer, a degree more, and the chocolate will actually taste completely different. From there, we have to deshell it. It actually has much like a peanut, like a little shell around it. So we have to remove the shells from them. And then from there, we have stone grinders where we put all of our nibs. And all the nib is just the cacao bean without its shell. And we put them to grind and refine for 4 days straight. So they'll go in there with our final mix of recipe. So if we're making a dark chocolate, it's those cacao beans with sugar, in our case, organic, unrefined sugar. If we're making a milk chocolate, we're adding milk powder to it. And if we're doing infusions, like our most popular, which is our café con leche, we're adding things like coffee or different infusions into it. And so from there, it'll refine for about 4 days. We actually use a little bit of data and science to test out when the chocolate's ready. We actually use something called a micrometer, where we could test out the particle size and how big the molecule in the chocolate is. And once we determine it's fine enough where it's smooth, we can take it out. And then from there, it'll be another 24 hours before the chocolate will set. So just to get to that step, it's around 5 to 6 days, just from from the time we start roasting to the point where we have just our base chocolate.
That is fascinating. And I will say, during the early pandemic, I bought a bean myself and did the whole thing, and I fermented it and I processed it in my Vitamix at home for several hours, and it felt like a long time. And still, the
Yeah.
chocolate was quite gritty. And I was reading about how, like, chocolate makers, like, it's a many day process to get it as smooth as we enjoy when we buy a piece of chocolate from a chocolatier.
Absolutely. I'm glad your Vitamix survived because I have burned through several food processors. Cocoa beans are super, super dry and gritty, so I'm glad yours survived.
It was a really interesting process, and I definitely learned a lot. So I'm curious, you mentioned that when you source the beans, you keep them all separate. What are they different tasting notes? Like, what are the different properties of the beans that make them a bean from that place?
Yeah. So I think to the average person, they think of chocolate, and whenever I ask people, like, what does chocolate taste to you? Most times they can just describe it as chocolate just tastes like chocolate. Like, we don't really have any other way of defining it. Or a lot of times we think of chocolate as sweet or bitter. So sort of these notes more on how much sugar it contains when we think of like dark versus milk. And the reason for that is most chocolate we eat out there is made by a few companies in the world. It's a super monopolized commodity that we eat. And what happens is these big companies buy from a bunch of places, they mix them all together, and it all tastes the same. It's very homogenized. It's very similar to coffee. What we do is similar to like a small coffee roaster or a winery, is we're bringing from different places. So great example is Colombia. We bring from 3 different regions in Colombia, 2 on the Atlantic side, 1 on the Pacific side. And there's a lot of things, much like wine, that play a role in terms of what the cocoa beans themselves will taste like. One is the genetics. I always compare it to apples. We have this like very, very immediate idea of like what type of apples we like based on acidity, based on texture, on tartness. And that's something immediately people can tell you, right? Because this is a fruit, there's that same variability in all the genetics in cacao. There's some that have more sugar than others, some that are more citrusy, some that are more tart. So it starts from there. Then you have soil, whatever you've planted in that soil previously or next to it. All of those things play a big, big role. So when even just tasting the cacao beans, you have some that taste more like coffee, more darker, robust, others that are more florally, some that are more citrusy. Like we just got beans from Guatemala, and they're very like almost raspberry-ish, citrusy, very, very fruity. So when you blend, if we were to blend them all together, we would lose all of those nuances and all of those lovely tones. But in the example of our Colombian, we have these 3 very, very distinct flavors, even coming from the same country, where we have one that is super, super almost raisiny. It tastes like eating a raisin. Then we have another one that has more of like a fudgy traditional chocolate flavor, and that's just from the bean itself. And then we have a third one that is more on the floral side. So it has more of like a kind of like a florally citrusy notes to it. So the ability to keep those as kind of micro batches allows us to really be able to appreciate not only what the farmers have done, but also what the soil has done throughout different generations.
Do you have a favorite bean?
That's very tough. So I'm Colombian, so I'm always inclined. When I first started the business, I actually only wanted to bring cacao from Colombia, and that proved to be very, very difficult. But the Colombians are some of my favorite. Right now, though, my absolute favorite bar that we're making is from Puerto Rico. I love fruity chocolate. Like I love citrus and red fruit in my chocolate. Like I just enjoy that. And that particular bean is just on the fruity side. So I really enjoy it. So that's the one when people tell me what's your favorite right now, that would be it. Plus, I think the island has struggled a lot to be able to bring that crop, which is such a hard crop period to grow. But with everything that's gone on, it's proved even more difficult. So it's almost like this very special harvest that we can offer and showcase. And to a lot of people, even in the US, they're like, Puerto Rico grows cacao? They have no idea. So it also becomes a fun thing, cultural thing to bring to people. But I think it's a very, very special, delicious cacao.
That's amazing. You just mentioned starting your business. So tell me how you got into the business of chocolate.
Well, a rather unorthodox left turn in my career. So I'm actually an organizational psychologist by training. I used to be a management consultant at a big accounting firm. And I used to travel about 150,000 miles per year visiting clients. I was on a plane Monday through Thursday. And I got to see a lot of things, eat a lot of things. And one of the things that I saw in my travels was this life-changing hot chocolate. I was at a little farmer's market, tried this hot chocolate, and I was completely enamored by the idea of it being so simple, not the chocolate that I was used to sort of seeing on the regular, and started tinkering with the idea of what makes this so special and how can I do this for friends and family. And started to research more and realize that it all came down to the quality of the ingredients and using minimal things, no fillers, no preservatives, things like that. When I first wanted to start the business, I wanted it to be a side hustle. I wanted to kind of keep my job, have this be something that I could go to somebody to manufacture for me, this hot chocolate recipe, and then me just sell it on the side. When I started to reach out to a bunch of companies, realized that the most foundational thing in the product, which was the quality of the chocolate, was not being offered. It was not there. And it was then that I realized that if I wanted to create something that was high quality, I'd have to own the manufacturing process. I said to myself, I'd save up, give myself 2 years to start up and see how it went, if I could make chocolate, if people would buy it, if I could succeed at it. And after those 2 years, if it didn't work out, I could always go back to what I knew how to do formally. And if it did work out, then fantastic. I didn't know a lot back then, that's for sure. I knew about business, but I didn't really know about the food business. And so it's been a long journey and a roller coaster along the way for sure.
What was the hardest part about building your business?
I mean, it sounds very general, but not knowing what you don't know, kind of not realizing the difficulties of producing at mass, not understanding, I in my previous career, I used to be a consultant for different businesses and I was industry agnostic and didn't ever go into hospitality. I was one of the few industries I never touched upon. So when I came into it, it was like starting, it was almost like going to grad school all over again and learning except via punches. So kind of tumbled about. And yeah, I think what saved me was that I started very small. I didn't invest a lot into it. And I didn't have, my failures came at a small cost financially where I could pick myself back up and try again, as opposed to just failing big and then not having the resources to continue. But yeah, probably in manufacturing, not realizing how difficult it is to produce a food product, to go out and sell something, especially chocolate, where everyone's kind of like, what's so special about it? It's chocolate. There's tons of chocolate brands out there. But being able to tell that story, being able to bring forth a narrative as to what makes us different, why our chocolate costs more than the average pharmacy chocolate, all those things really helped me in being able to voice what value we provided as a brand that was so different.
That was very interesting. Your path is very interesting. So what does a regular day look like at your job?
A regular day at my job varies so much. I'm very much still an involved owner. There's days like yesterday where we have this brand new client that we're making a special chocolate for that's going out to stores in about 10 different states. And so I was there packaging, folding cardboard, putting chocolate bars in there, realizing we were short out of our order 20 bars, which always seems to happen in a big order. And so having to go and remold bars and just get the last 20 out so we can get it out the door, and then going back to my office to do admin work and making sure we have enough ingredients for the week. My day varies between running the business and actually still being very much a part of the business, training people to come be part of the team, sourcing cacao. Sometimes it's delivering things, and sometimes it's knocking on doors and asking people if they'd like to try our product so that way they can put it into our store. So it varies still a lot, and I still run it pretty lean. I don't have any investors or partners in it, so, and I'm still very much in the grind of it. So I'm a person of many hats.
You said something really interesting just there, which was you remold bars. So let's say you're making your chocolate, pour it into bars. The rest of the chocolate, how do you store that? Is it kind of stored in bricks or?
Yeah. So when I mentioned to you, we take it out of the refiners. That's, when you talk about like the average chocolate shop, they're buying that. So they're starting at that step. So everything we do before that is to turn it into bricks. And sometimes those bricks, we actually do sell them. So where do you live, by the way?
California.
California. Okay. So for example, like Salt and Straw ice cream, if you've ever been to Salt and Straw, we do collabs with them. And so we'll send them our bricks. So sometimes part of our business is just that. But then after that, to make like, let's say chocolate bars, we have to take those bricks and we put them into machines called tempering machines. A lot of times people watch baking shows and they hear the kind of term tempering. And that's what we do. We'll take the chocolate, remelt it at this very gentle temperature and re-cool it down so we can stick a mold under and shape them into chocolate bars or bonbons or peanut butter cups or anything like that. So we have to kind of shape them into their final step because normally they get stored into these like 30-pound bricks. We put them into a hotel pan, solidify them, and then we wrap them in butcher paper and we identify them by the region and the percentages and everything. And then from there, we kind of pull what we need as we produce.
That is fascinating. As I've been doing this podcast, I've been talking to more people, and so much of people's jobs seem to be like storage management, like where
Yes.
to put the stuff. And I can just imagine your your place and just big bricks of chocolate everywhere.
We have a chocolate wall of bricks forming because in a given batch we make about 500 pounds of chocolate. In a given week we could do about 1,000 pounds of chocolate, and so not all of it gets put into final form since we do wholesale it. So some of it does get stored in the brick form, and so you have a giant rack just full of chocolate bricks. That cost a lot of money actually. So
Oh, I'm
people are always
sure.
like, oh, can I buy this? I'm like, yes, but it's 30 pounds of chocolate.
What is your favorite item that you make?
Oh, I think probably the thing that gives me the most like pride and joy is our cafe con leche bar. I think I just absolutely love seeing how people light up when they try it. We do a collab with different roasters that do similar things than what we do in coffee. So it's nice to see that marriage between us and someone else who's a craftsperson. And a lot of our products are kind of Latin infused, kind of bring my culture into it. And so for a very long time, I always saw coffee bars, but not a cafe con leche, something that represented a little bit more of the Latin way of drinking coffee. And we're in Miami and we're fueled by cafecito. And so it's very fun to see how people are like, oh my God, this is a very Miami thing. And so it's nice to see the culture represented in something as simple as a chocolate bar. And as a result, it's our top seller. It's what everyone, any tourist who comes, they're like, we want the most Miami thing you have, and it's the coffee one. So it's nice to kind of see that go out and outside of Miami be sold in different places that have no connection to Miami or Latin culture. So it's nice to kind of see that continue on.
What is the single coolest thing you've ever done at your work?
What is the single? I've done a few things where I'm like, I did not expect this to happen. This was not on the dream board. I think probably the top two things was when Whole Foods reached out to us. I was like not expecting that at all. I was just like, I don't think that's within the realm of possibility. And then the second was probably getting to meet Alice Waters, like as part of the journey. It was just like this was also not something I ever envisioned happening. And without seeking it out, it's just kind of been things that organically have happened, and it's been, you know, a lovely little reward in this process.
That's awesome. What's the hardest part of your job?
I think when you own your business completely, and we've grown in the last 11 months, moved into a factory space that's triple the size than it was before. Taking that on is it's a lot of stress. At the end of the day, you are responsible for a team and keeping the lights on and making sure you make payroll and paying people. I take that as a big responsibility on my end. So I think just sometimes I think being in business, there's a lot of things thrown at you that you don't control, and a lot of things that happen, and the unpredictability of it, and being able to be nimble and pivot and be crafty in how you respond to it is probably the hardest thing, especially when it has like a financial impact. So for us right now, we're going through logistics troubles where, because of things completely unrelated to our industry and our world, we have delays in being able to receive cardboard and paper and things like that, things that are very necessary for us to function. And in the last 2 years, cacao has gone through one of the worst crises that it's gone through in a very long time, where there was extreme droughts, extreme weather, and also a lot of viruses that impacted it. And places that we don't source from went through horrible droughts and lower crop yields, and as a result started impacting us, because suddenly all those people that would buy from there commodity cacao, which is not usually what we purchase at all, suddenly started to come over to the small places where we would buy from and saying, okay, now we want to buy from you. And that played a big role, where suddenly we didn't even have cacao sometimes to buy, and our business is completely fueled by that ingredient. It's pretty much one of the, I buy like three ingredients for the business, and that is the top one. So that little things like that where you don't see it coming, and then it's suddenly like, okay, where are we gonna get our main ingredient from? Because climate change is now playing a role into the business, and these big companies are now trying to buy from under us where they never had anything to do with our realm and our source of cacao. So things like that. I think there's always something. It's always an interesting day.
That is really interesting. And I had been reading about that too, especially around the Reese's peanut butter cup situation, which
That was a
everybody was kind
great
of, yeah,
thing. Yeah.
it's fascinating because people were talking about, oh, they're just kind of being cheap, which companies often are. But it turned out that there actually was like a shortage of cacao, and they were kind of scrambling to get enough chocolate to actually
Yeah.
make the product that they've been making for years.
Yeah, exactly. And that was a great story because it kind of showcased to people are like, oh, this is why it's one chocolate, even Reese's got very expensive all of a sudden in the last like Easter candy. I think this was the year of the sweet tarts and things like that because people were like, it's very expensive to do Easter candy that's chocolate, even from the more commodity brands. But yeah, it's been a two very rough years in terms of not just quantity of cacao, but pricing. You know, we've heard stories of ports where truckers were going to the port to deliver cacao, and someone from one of the big companies would flag them over and say, "Hey, I'll give you $100 if you divert that to me." So
Wow.
yeah, it's even things like that where it's like, are we getting it? What's happening? And also, will it be the quality that we expect it to be? Because, the reality is, a lot of people don't realize cocoa trades on the stock market and it's a commodity. And if you ever want to find out the price, you can go on to the London or New York Stock Exchange and see how much cocoa beans are. We've never followed that mode of purchasing because it tends to be set by somebody in an office, and it has completely put farmers in a cycle of generational poverty, and it's never been fair to the farmer. So every time that we have dealt with our different co-ops and farms, we completely ignore that and pay much more than what the market is offering. When that market suddenly shifted and the big guys had no other way to acquire their stuff but to pay farmers more, their requirements for what that cacao looks like is because they're mixing it with a lot of sugar and palm oil and all sorts of stuff. They don't really care. So it also played a role in terms of farmers saying, well, if I can sell this at the same price and do less of the fermentation, less of the quality control, then sure. So we had that happen with one farm, and the rest recognize the long-term relationships that we have. But for sure, I mean, sometimes it's nice to do less work for the same amount of money.
I am curious about, you were talking earlier about explaining to customers and people about the story behind your chocolate and the quality of your chocolate and why it's worth that cost that a Hershey's bar might not cost.
Right.
How do you normally pitch that?
Yeah. So one of the things I like to say that I'm a big nerd. I like to say that we're chocolate nerds. One of the things that I've implemented from the very start has been opening up our factory space. So when you go into our physical factory, we're actually all glass. And so there's full transparency of everything we're doing. And sort of there's a little bit of this aha moment for people being like, oh, that's what a cacao bean is. One of the things that I've implemented from the very start has been doing a lot of education and offering up tours for school kids, for the community. Every weekend, we offer people to come in and see what we're doing and teach them, like, this is a cacao pulp, this is a pod, this is a bean, this is where your chocolate comes from. Because one of the things I started realizing early on was most people, even chefs who work with chocolate day in, day out, don't realize that it comes from a fruit. I think a lot of times when I see kids, they're like, it comes from a package. It's like, yes, but where does that package come from? You laugh, but it's true. We have this disconnect with food, I think in general, but in my space with chocolate, there's this disconnect of like, what is it? Where does it come from? And it has this bad PR also of like, it's bad for you because the chocolate that we've been used to eating is candy. And it's probably in the coffee space. From when I talk to the coffee guys, it's sort of like an espresso versus like a frappo mix of a bunch of stuff, explosion milkshake, right? So being able to educate people, just look at what this is, and we get people who come back to like, now I understand, now you've ruined me from eating chocolate because it doesn't taste the same anymore because all you were eating is all this sugar, and you come to appreciate it more. But for me, it's also about highlighting through social media, through interviews, where we're getting stuff from. I personally go to all the farms that we work with, being able to tell their stories, why it's important to them, what they're doing that's so different. Bringing a little piece of that to me is very important. Being able to share that with our customers through our website, through emails, and showcasing what makes it different and unique. And when you purchase a bar of ours that, let's say, we're bringing now from a special Haitian co-op, when you purchase that bar, what's behind that and who it supports, versus when you purchase a bar from Hershey's or somebody else, not only from the quality standpoint, but also what you're helping support and how our business model helps support that as well.
It's incredible to me that all this came from you drinking hot chocolate one day at a farmer's market. Did you always have a connection to chocolate, or was that like really the turning point?
No, zero. No, nothing with food. I I grew up very entrepreneurial. I had my first business card when I was 9. So I always was selling something. My parents were entrepreneurs. And so my parents in Colombia would sell, had like a little store where they sold like household wares and decorative items. And I would sell the gift wrap because it's like, you need a present. Here's your gift wrap. And so I was always about selling, and I always knew I'd have my own business. But as far as like food, my only job in food was when I was around 13. It was my family's coffee shop, and I was instructed to cut the lettuce, cut my finger, and was banished from the kitchen to the register from then on out. So very little, no food experience, nothing. Like I said, touched pretty much every industry except hospitality within my consulting days. So absolutely no connection to chocolate. Enjoyed eating it, but beyond that, didn't know anything about it. Everyone always assumes that my family is some sort of like cacao farming family. Nope, nothing, nothing in farming. I think anytime people are like that knew me from before, like, wait, she's doing what now?
Really good hot chocolate can change your life.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you wish more people understood about your work?
I hope that most people understood the value of good chocolate, the people behind it. Um, that cheap chocolate usually has cheap ingredients, cheap labor. I would say like chocolate to me brings happy memories, and it should be a happy thing. And I think if most people knew what was in their chocolate, they wouldn't eat it. Not just from what they put in it, from the farm level, from cheap chocolate, you'll see what those pods look like versus what we buy, but also the system that it supports that's been sort of hidden. If you dig enough, you've read about it, but for the average consumer, they don't know. And I think most people would not eat chocolate if they knew. So I think that just being educated as to like where good chocolate comes from, why it costs what it costs, and why cheap chocolate is not great for us as people, but also as humanity.
If people wanted to know a little more about where their chocolate comes from or purchase from kind of sustainable companies that pay fair labor wages, where should they be looking?
I think look for your local chocolate factory. There's tons of little bean to bars in bunch of places, not just big cities, but also small places that are making excellent things, sourcing right, making stuff that has minimal ingredients. I always tell people when they come on the tour, flip over a chocolate bar next time you're at the grocery line and see how much stuff is in it. Usually first ingredients, palm oil, which that is a whole other topic in itself of not great stuff. Vegetable oil, things like that. But I always tell people just see what's in it and see what a difference that is, and just shop smart. But ask questions. The industry has changed because the consumers are supporting people like us, and because people are asking questions. Part of it is kind of a little bit of washing away. It was a few years ago I saw M&M started having percentages on them, and I was just like, they're like, it's this percentage on the chocolate part. I'm like, which is the chocolate part in an M&M? So believe it or not, I think consumers do have a lot of power in, that Reese's article that made people started sharing it, and it went viral, and suddenly Reese's was like, okay, we're going to go back to make not just the chocolate part, but the peanut butter was fake peanut butter. So I think being informed and educated, looking at what you're buying, supporting your small makers, and asking questions to those big guys, even in small things like social media, does play a big role nowadays. So I think those are great ways to start. And I've seen it make changes in the time I've been in this business.
What's your favorite part of your job?
I think seeing, at the end of the day, it sounds so serious, but it's chocolate. It's fun. It's a part of, our biggest time of year is always around celebrations. It's from Halloween through Mother's Day. And to see people that we are part of their celebrations and their special moments at those key times, and having them tell us that we bring a little bit of joy in kind of the upheaval of things. A moment of serenity is what I've had people tell me. Like I said, it's chocolate. It's not that serious. It's not that deep. But it's nice to have a simple little luxury that people can kind of have a moment of, let's say, of peace, and enjoy that, or celebration, and enjoy that with somebody and help them feel special. So it's nice to be a part of that, and to see people throughout the years have us be that for them.
That's amazing. Carolina, this has been such a pleasure. Where can people find you, your chocolates, online, in the real world?
Sure. You can find us on socials at Exquisito Chocolates, and then online, exquisitochocolates.com. And then we're also at a bunch of different little gourmet grocery stores. So we could be, even if you're not in Miami, we could be at your local spot. We do collabs. If you're in the New York area, we work with a big brewing company called Other Half, and you can actually have chocolate beer made with our stuff. So even cool stuff like that.
That is cool. And that's it for this week on Interesting Jobs, the podcast, where we chat with people with interesting jobs. If you like this episode, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. And if you have an interesting job or know someone with one, email us and let us know. We might even be able to have you on the show.